When you work in education leadership, you don't get off at 5 o'clock. Your mind is always on the clock, thinking of ways to solve problems for your students, parents, and teachers. On the Clock is your go-to podcast to learn valuable insights from education leaders across the United States. I'm your host, Todd Dallas Lamb, former White House appointee to the U.S. Department of Education, and we are now on the clock. Welcome back to On the Clock. We are taping here live from the Excel in Ed conference, Jeb Bush's baby, and my guest today from PowerSchool is Shivani Stumpf. Do I have that name right? Stumpf?
Oh, you did fantastic. Thanks, Todd.
I love an Indian woman with a German last name. That could be tricky for some people, but not for me.
You nailed it.
You are the Chief of Innovation for PowerSchool, one of the largest companies in American education. Tell me a little bit about PowerSchool. You just, before we started taping, you mentioned that that company is 25 years old. It seems so much bigger than that. I can't believe it's only 25 years. And I think of PowerSchool as a company that has its fingers in many different pools of water. Walk me through the depth and breadth of that company.
Yeah, so Todd, like you said, we've been around for 25 years. For this entire time, focused, of course, on education technology. The mission of the company has always been to empower students and teachers to maximize education outcomes, help them reach their potential. So PowerSchool, as most people would know, it started off with the student information system, right? Technology, which is really that's the heart and soul of what school districts and state departments of education use, right? It's where you track your attendance and your grades and your behavior incidents and your enrollments. And over the course of the last 25 years, PowerSchool has expanded our footprint with best-of-breed technology. So invested in student information systems, invested in learning management systems. So Schoology is a PowerSchool product, which is used by millions of students every single day. It was huge when COVID happened, right? Because all of a sudden, overnight, everybody had to go to online learning.
Yep.
Then we have products that allow students to take assessments. So how, formative assessments are delivered every day in the classroom, how teachers take tests.
My son used Naviance, which is another one.
Naviance, which is our college and career readiness solution. Headed To, which is a career exploration platform. All the tools and technologies for teachers. So teacher PD, teacher applicant tracking, job boards. And then most recently, our investments with data analytics and, of course, artificial intelligence. So that's really been, the course of our history for the last 25 years. So, and now we've also recently added a communications platform to our platform as well. So really the goal of PowerSchool is we want to make sure that we provide a one-stop shop for our districts and our state agencies so they don't have to piecemeal all of the different technologies, right? Because if all of them can work together, they work better.
I recently read a book about John Brown, who's a fascinating character in American history to me, who was 125 years early on understanding that a certain group of people, African Americans, were equal to us in this country, way ahead of his peers. And I was approached 6 months ago by my son, and I was asking him about Chat GPT, and I'd never seen it before. He brought out his computer, and he goes, "Give me a topic." And he said, I said, "John Brown." And in 12 seconds, a pretty complete overview of John Brown comes across the screen, and I'm like blown away by it. That's 6 months ago. And now all anybody can talk about in American education is AI. It is dominating the conversations everywhere I go. As the Chief Innovation Officer, that has to be a big part of your role at PowerSchool. When you think AI, when I think AI, and I'm going to ask you what you think of it, it can be at once terrifying to parents who think
that their
kids aren't going to learn, and also exhilarating to think that it can maybe open up areas of learning that maybe were even unthought of, never even considered historically. AI, Shivani, talk to me about that.
So Todd, we have, 16,000 customers worldwide, and I'll tell you. So my background is in data analytics and AI, and AI was sort of, not a thing or not a cool thing, in education, right? It was used in bits and pieces, but not broadly. And when this sort of revolution came about, like you said, it was almost this time last year. It was, in my opinion, one of the best things that has happened to education, and one of the best things education is gonna witness and experience. I sort of heard some very similar reactions to what you're mentioning, right? And I was expecting, there'd be probably more people, parents, educators that are scared and skeptical about the technology, and I think that was the case when it first came out. But I'll tell you, every week, as I talk to more and more customers, I recently did a webinar. It was on artificial intelligence. I had 2,000 districts register for that webinar.
Wow.
And I am so positive. I'm so amazed at the positive reception that we're receiving about the concept. Now, of course, don't get me wrong, AI extremely powerful, right? But we absolutely need to acknowledge and understand and know how to work with sort of the pitfalls, right? AI is actually pretty dumb. I know we call it artificial intelligence, but there's really not a lot of intelligence. It's pretty dumb, but it can do some amazing things. And you need to know how to deal with, what we call hallucination in AI, which is it thinks it's giving you the right answer, but it's actually is not giving you the right answer. You talked about ChatGPT. It's an interesting, so many interesting stories where, somebody was researching for a paper, and ChatGPT basically gave them a response saying, oh, this is a full research paper by a very renowned researcher. And he tweeted that researcher, thanking him for this research paper, and the researcher said, I have never written a paper like that.
Right.
So, so there's bias, there's hallucination, there's security and privacy considerations. And what I'm extremely excited about is, a lot of the work that we're doing is really around making sure that we have the responsible principles, the foundational principles in place so we can educate our customers about how you can use this power of AI, right? And how it can be so transformative to save teachers time. A lot of innovation that we're building, you can actually talk to your data. So imagine a teacher being able to ask a question of her data saying, show me Alice's online engagement, or which students of mine have not submitted their homework or are past due on an assignment, or parents being able to just ask a question and get results back. That has been, we've all talked about democratizing data in education for so long, and we finally are at the precipice of doing that.
All right. So I am recently turned 56-year-old white guy. What's the point of being a 56-year-old white guy if you can't ask 56-year-old white guy questions? So let me play the part of a parent who's terrified of AI and tell you that I don't like the fact that when I was a kid, right? We had to read about John Brown, we had to digest John Brown, and we had to compare and contrast in a form of an essay that distinctive human being who, in my judgment, basically created the Civil War, which fixed America, which that took work. My son, in 12 seconds, gave me an essay on John Brown that he could have submitted to his teacher, makes a few changes. Is that progress? Has my son learned anything? Old guy like me says that's why it terrifies me. How do you respond to that?
So what I would say is that, like everything, right, there is ways in which we can put technology to good use. Yep. So what I would ask you, Todd, is, and I don't know if you were one of those parents back in the day when Google came out, right, the search engine. Yeah. Or even calculators. I know we're old enough to talk about calculators.
Yeah.
But when calculators came out, everybody thought that, we're just going to become dumb. The entire population is just going to, we're all just going to not know how to do math anymore because we have calculators. And so that's my response, right? Like every time when a new piece of technology has emerged, right, there's always this fear, but then that just becomes or smartphones even.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, we've had hundreds of conversations over whether kids should have a device, and now we kind of bark if the kid doesn't have a device.
Exactly. And so that's my point, right? Like, in my opinion, technology can be really powerful. It can play a great role. And that's what we just need to understand, So the first thing is, because I a lot of school districts, right, they banned ChatGPT, etc. But the thing of it is, kids are going to be using it regardless, right? So my point is, how can we incorporate it into our teaching and learning, educate students and educate our kids what are good uses of it, right? They still need to learn critical thinking, but how can we use artificial intelligence infused within their learning so it actually becomes an aid and it actually helps them move forward, right? Versus banning it, because we're not doing ourselves or them any good.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're doing at PowerSchool, right? In my role as Chief Innovation Officer, I spend 24 hours of my day thinking about how we're going to be bringing this technology to bear. And in my opinion, one of the biggest revolutions, Todd, that we're going to see in education is personalizing learning for every student. And this whole concept of personalizing education has been talked about for decades in education, with zero progress, in my opinion, that's been made. And the reason for that is, let's think about it, right? When you're personalizing something for someone, right, whether in education or even your retail experience or whatever, what does that really mean? What does it mean to you when I say I'm going to personalize something for you?
You're going to provide instruction that actually fits how I learn and reads how I learn and redirects how you're distributing information to me based on what you know about how I learn.
Exactly. And what your mastery is, right, in a specific subject, and how much of time you spend on the bus, right, and how much time you actually have for your homework. Okay, so you have a teacher, right, and imagine life before all this technology existed. You have a teacher in a classroom with 30 kids. How can she really personalize education for each of those 30 kids?
It's got to be something close to impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why, in my opinion, and this is what our North Star is, and what I could not be more excited about waking up every day, going to work, is that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to use this technology. We have, so PowerSchool, been around for 25 years. We have all of these systems that I described at the beginning of our podcast, right? Those are what I would describe as transactional systems, right? Systems that are collecting all of this data in a secure fashion from, what kids are doing every day in the classroom. And using this data, we can actually form a profile of the student, right? So we can really understand, what are John's strengths, weaknesses, aptitude, interest, GPAs. What did he score on the test last week? What did he score on his state assessment? How much time is he spending reading online? So we have...
Are those the analytics? I mean, when you mentioned analytics earlier in an interview, analytics is one of those words that can mean 1,000 things to 1,000 people. Is that boiling down of how that student learns? Is that when PowerSchool talks about analytics, is that what they're talking about?
That is one part of what we're talking about is, how do we leverage all of this data to provide insights? So you as a teacher, you as a superintendent, you as a parent know, as a superintendent, right? How am I doing on my state assessments? What are my top 5 disciplinary incidents across the school district, right? Do I have chronic absenteeism or not? I mean, the top 5 issues that every superintendent is dealing with right now is chronic absenteeism. We heard morning, Jeb Bush talked about NAEP and the fact that, we have the worst ELA and math scores in decades for 13-year-olds, right? Chronic absenteeism, proficiency, learning being behind, social-emotional learning, right? All of these are real problems. And this is where step number 1 is use all of this data to provide those insights. But then what's even more powerful is use all of this data to allow AI to crunch it. And then AI can actually personalize the paths for each kid, right?
Yep.
Because it knows, I'm not good in algebra, you're not good in geometry. Great. Why are both of us getting the same syllabus and curriculum? I should get more algebra training, you should get more geometry training, right? And that's exactly what we're doing with the technology.
Shivani, how did you get started in this business? How did you get into education? Your background, you said it was in
data analytics.
Which is, you must have had some dad just kicking you to work your brains out as a young child. I'm guessing that's true.
Yes, coming from my background, it was all about academics. It didn't matter if you were good at anything else, right? But did you get an A on your test? And oh my God, if you got a B or a B+, that was not acceptable. But no, this is, it's a very gratifying experience to be, and I hope I'm not going to offend everybody that's out in Silicon Valley by saying this, but, you can wake up and you can decide to go and optimize ads, or you can wake up in the morning and decide to go and try to change the world. And
Yeah.
I wanted to try to change the world.
Well, God bless you for your dad and your mom, and for you, Shivani Stumpf. I can't say that name enough. I love it. Thank you for being on the clock, and thank you for what you do. I really appreciate it, and I'm so excited to see what comes down the road for you and for PowerSchool and for kids that you serve.
Well, thank you, Todd. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. On the Clock is part of the Strategos Podcast Network. To view the entire lineup of shows, please visit us at strategosgroup.com. See you next time.